Hello, my name is Tim Baillie, and this is my 2015 Installer of the Year submission from Mobile Electronics Magazine. Up first is my main vehicle entry. The vehicle I am presenting here today is a 1963 split-window Pro Touring Corvette. When the client brought me this car originally, he had been to a couple other shops in Western Canada, had them work on the interior, and had never gotten the result that he was looking for. I kept getting these big, fancy, flashy interiors that he had no desire to have installed in his 1963 Corvette. They didn't resemble what he wanted, what the car represented, or anything. So he chose to bring the car to me because of some renderings that I had drawn for him showing some of the European styling cues from Ferrari and Lamborghini that he liked, and also incorporating some styling cues from the new Corvettes that he really liked and wanted those incorporated into the interior. The material of choice for this interior was Sintra. Over the years I've found it to be very lightweight, easy to work with, easy to router, very easy to sand, all body fillers attached to it, and it is also water resistant. Now a car of this magnitude, being a close to seven-figure car when it's done, will probably never see the rain, but it will get washed, and if he does occasionally get caught in the rain while out for a cruise for a weekend or a car show or something like that, this isn't going to do damage to his interior parts when water gets inside the door and damage an expensive interior. The other main reason for going with a lightweight product is, as mentioned, it is a Pro Touring car. It has a 700 plus horsepower LS7 going into it, full tube chassis, suspension, front and rear coilovers, and the last thing he wanted to have in his interior was an extremely heavy interior stereo system that was going to either make the car sag, or to be able to make the car not sag, have to crank up the coilovers, etc., which will in turn affect the spring rate of the springs and how the car handles. I started with the door panels, taking the original door panel, breaking it apart, using some of the styling cues from it, taking the original cardboard panel, copying that to MDF, which I then copied. Once I made the MDF perfect, I then routed into 1/8" ABS, which was now going to be my new platform for the entire door. ABS, as you well know, is very durable for its thickness, and of course is extremely waterproof. We then started our basic shell, again out of MDF, transferring that over to Sintra on the router. It was 3/4 inch Sintra. The door from the factory is extremely curved from top to bottom, and the last thing we wanted was to have a door panel that was going to move when you take it off of the car. The other thing we wanted was very few fasteners to hold the door panel onto the car, and of course not to see any of the fasteners. The first thing that we did was take the initial door 3/4 inch Sintra panel, bond that to the base 1/8" ABS panel, and then run that through the table saw and kerf it so that we could get the door panel to curve very easily. Once that door panel was curved, we then used a Norton Speed Grip product. It's a urethane adhesive used to glue many things together. We mounted the door panel to the car and basically squeezed a couple tubes of the Speed Grip into all of the curved sections. Given it a chance to dry, it formed the door very nicely and very perfectly, giving us a completely curved door panel that would need no fasteners to achieve that curve when put back on the vehicle. A styling cue that the client definitely wanted was down the bottom of the car in the rocker panel is an exhaust cutout, and incorporated into that exhaust cutout is a small indent that starts at the front of the car and extends all the way to the back. It starts at basically nothing and comes into a much deeper indent right at the exhaust tip. So we wanted to pull that styling cue into the door panel, and that is how we made the tweeter. We used a 3D routering technique to be able to router the same style groove, roughly the same corner, same angle, everything as the exhaust system. And we're able to start at a 1/16 and going up to just over a 1/4 inch by the tweeter grill. Once we had the multiple layers bonded together, we used a lot of CA glue because it bonds to cincher very, very well. Very quick setup time, obviously. We started filling all of the curves, matching up the two door panels so that they were exactly the same. The door panels themselves will be held onto the door with a few small machine screws with thread inserts on the actual fiberglass door panel itself, so that if the doors are taken on and off however many times, it will not damage the fiberglass and end up stripping the mounting method of the door panels. With cincher being so light, it makes working with a joy. Years ago, even today, installers build these big elaborate interiors and door panels, and I often wonder whether they take into any consideration the amount of weight that they're adding to a vehicle, and more importantly to a door. These big sculpted door panels weigh hundreds of pounds, and while they look cool, they are going to, over a long term cause damage to the vehicle, the hinges, door opening, the alignment of doors, stuff like that. So going with something that was very lightweight was definitely very, very appealing to our client. The fact that it is very easy to cut, very easy to router, it's easy to tap, so if you want to bolt something together or bolt it into the car, etc. It's very easy to screw into, pre-drill. All in all, it's a very, very pleasant product to use compared to MDF. Moving to the back of the car, the subwoofer enclosure, where it was situated between the wheel wells, was going to actually sit right above the rear end. So again, the last thing we wanted was an enclosure that was going to weigh way too much and sag the car. So again, we turned to Cintra for our enclosure for our dual Focal 13-inch woofers. We started with the bracing and dividers in the box, which we perforated with holes, routed all the edges to make sure that we had a smooth airflow throughout the box. Because we were going undersized on the box to fit between the wheel wells and only come out to a certain part on the floor of the back of the car, we decided to share a chamber for both woofers. Taking the same format that we used in the door panel, we took the top of the box, curved that, filled it with speed grip to get our curve, and then went over it, sanded it smooth, as these panels will all be covered in Italian leather. The customer also didn't want to see any of the product in the back of the car. Again, it's a high dollar car. He's spending a lot of money. He wants a very specific look for the car, and the last thing he wanted was to see woofers in the back, amplifiers, etc. So to get the maximum output from the vehicle, we decided to build a home theater style enclosure and downfire it into the floor of the car. Now, being a 63 Corvette and all fiberglass, that was sure going to have a pretty good chance of rattling the entire car, bouncing the waves of the woofers right off the fiberglass floor. So what we ended up doing was taking 1/2-inch Cintra and bonding it with speed grip, a lot of speed grip, basically covering the entire panel. 3 separate panels covered the back floor, or the back wall, and the floor of the Corvette behind the seats, so the woofer had a solid surface to be able to project the bass into without vibrating the car. The rear of the car was modeled slightly after some of the modern Porsches, the way that the back raises up on a curve. Again, he didn't want to see woofers, he didn't want to see amplifiers, so we made a floor cover that would in fact hide the amplifiers, hide the bass output vent of the woofer box. All the rear panels were made out of Sintra. The side panels were built using a stack fab system. We wanted to try and make each panel the same from side to side, so everything was routed in duplicates from side to side. Unfortunately, being a car from 1963, the word tolerances and other words like that were something that were obviously completely foreign to the manufacturers of the Corvette at General Motors, as the entire car was out of whack, front to back, side to side, top to bottom, which caused us a lot of grief and a lot of extra hours, basically having to hand make both side panels completely from scratch, and not being able to use any of the duplicates we had routed from one side to the other. We also had to raise the entire side of the car, the woofer box, amp rack, everything up a 1/4 inch to be able to accommodate a sloping floor issue that we ran into in the factory fiberglass. The side panels originally became very bulky, a lot of material, and as we started fitting these to the car, and then obviously once we started applying our filler, we were able to go back in on the back side of the panels and shave off close to 50% of the Sintra that we had built up to gain our initial shape and sizing of the rear side panels in the car. Once this took place, we were then able to start sculpting our side panels and meticulously hand sanding each one side by side, area by area, so that they were sanded out to match as close to perfect as humanly possible. Each side panel is actually held in with 2 bolts, which is drilled and tapped into the amp rack. The amp rack itself is drilled and tapped with 4 bolts into the main Sintra floor panel that we bonded to the floor. And the woofer box is bolt and tapped to the main Sintra floor panel that we bonded to the car with also with 4 4/4 20 bolts. The top plate cover for the amp rack is held in place with 4 screws, which will be accessed by lifting up the Wilton wool carpet that we'll be using on the floor to cover the entire floor of the car as well as the amp cover. Again, the side panels and the woofer box will all be wrapped in a black Italian leather that's found in the new Ferraris. The floor piece that covers the amp rack, we also use the same design or same technique style as we did for the top of the box and for the door panels. We curved the entire floor piece, screwed it to the amp rack, and then went in, applied, I believe, 2 complete tubes of speed grip using a body filler spreader, and we worked it into all of the grooves on that panel. The reason that we have submitted an incomplete unfinished vehicle as our main vehicle entry is that I really wanted to show off the materials and the techniques used that I have seen currently. I haven't seen anybody building a complete interior out of essentially plastic. So we really wanted to showcase the product that we used and why we did it for the weight savings, as well as, you know, in the case of the doors, the moisture issues that could arise. So I wanted to thank you very much for looking at my main vehicle entry, and please enjoy the rest of the submission. For part 2, the installation expertise, under the electrical and operational integration category, I am submitting a police command vehicle that I built. This vehicle utilizes all the latest technology when it comes to two-way radio communication, laptop computers, Wi-Fi hub. It operates 2 different radio systems, a Motorola system, which the city themselves use to communicate from car to car, 911, or not 911, but with their dispatch. It also integrates the INIT system, which is a standalone federal police, the RCMP, frequency-based communication system that ties into the 911 system and all of the RCMP cars, dispatches, everything across Canada. It works on its own frequency. Nobody else in Canada can use this frequency. The vehicle also incorporates a Wi-Fi hub so that when it is on scene, being a supervisor vehicle, officers can use the Wi-Fi hub to access the internet, upload reports, everything all at the scene without having to be slowed down using data on their phones and or laptops, etc. The car incorporates a couple dozen LED and strobe lights. Several are mounted on custom mounts. The push bar was custom made for this vehicle, the Expedition. None of the companies that make the police push bars made one for this vehicle, so we had to take an F-150 and modify all the brackets to be able to fit the frame of the Expedition. Once the vehicle had left, it actually came back several weeks later for command center storage unit in the back. So we created one from scratch in our shop with multiple drawers, multiple dividers for weapons, computers, safety equipment, tape, anything needed at the scene of an accident or a crime that a supervisor would need. All the electronics for the vehicle were placed in the back, so it was easy to access. All of the lighting control modules, siren control modules, the main brains for the radio systems, everything were mounted in the back. So once we installed this command center, we were no longer able to access these as easy as we originally had when we designed it. So we actually made the back of the box, the command center box, be able to come off with the drawers slid open. You could easily access all the equipment, do any of the servicing that you need. All of the electronics in the back and in the console are on barrier strips, so product is easy to swap out because product is heavily used and abused and fails often, so it needs to be swapped out for other units. And everything on the vehicle is on some form of a Molex plug or disconnect for easy servicing also. The second category under the installation and expertise is cosmetic integration. What we've submitted is a dash kit and double din installation that I did in a Honda S2000, cutting the center of the dash out and creating the mounting kit from scratch basically. We started with a dash kit from a late model Lexus that had a very, very rough curve that matched the dash curvature a bit. We then cut that up, mounted that into the dash, and we took various fillers, filled it, matched the curve to the dash, used the ISO brackets on the side of the kit to mount the radio, and then made a bracket coming off the back of the radio that mounted down to where the factory radio, down below the factory single din radio, was mounted. Next up, we made a set of A-pillars for my own personal vehicle, Dodge Magnum, using the Audio Frog products, which comes with a lot of different mounting techniques, different pieces. Comes with a very nice chrome trim ring that goes around the speaker, grills that are paintable, new logos that you can apply to the grills if you change the colors. We ended up wrapping them in a Mercedes package tray material. It's a very, very fine, almost a velour type material, super stretchy, so making very pleasant, appealing curves in the A-pillars made it very easy to wrap with this material. Next up was a relocation of a heater control panel in my dual that I'm putting a 9-inch screen in the dash, so I wanted to relocate the heater controls up to the overhead console. So we modified the overhead console, mounted those into that, and then extended the harness up to the roof from the dash. Then next up is a late model 3 Series BMW. Customer wanted to have a lot of mid-bass up front, a lot of sound stage, so we ended up modifying the door panel to house a Morel 9-inch, a late woofer, using an older MB Quart flush grill out of their older 8-inch woofer, which fit perfectly with the 9-inch, to give a real factory look to the grill, similar to how the factory grills have a plastic flange going around the mesh part. We also then did A-pillars in the car for the Morel sealed mid-range and the Morel piccolo tweeter high up on the A-pillar, which also have the small plastic trim around it to give a very OEM look like the factory grills in the car. And last up was a portion of a big build that I did in a 69 Camaro, and this was the subwoofer box for dual 8-inch woofers mounted between the custom rear seat that we built for the vehicle. They started out as GTO seats, which were a lot wider. We then took the framework apart, cut it all down to create room in between the seat for the box. So using a combination of fiberglass and MDF, building the curved box, and then creating a grill at the top of the box similar to late 50s, early 60s Impalas, and then incorporating a Camaro logo on the actual grill itself. Part 3 of installation expertise is system design, creative use of space and materials. This installation was a full installation, front and back, top to bottom. Custom interior, every piece of trim in it was redone, custom trunk, full frame, motor, trans, smooth firewall, full build Pro Touring car. Starting up in the interior, we built custom ABS door panels using the same materials that we used throughout the installation, a Euro vinyl, some German weave inserts, mesh to match the seats. Custom dash, we took a 59 Impala dash, narrowed it, shortened it, welded it all up, smoothed it right out, then painted it in a some texture coat with satin black and satin clear. Had a lot of people ask if it was made out of plastic because of the texture and the look, and it was all rounded and smoothed out. All the trim, openings, radio heater, all that had been removed. All the wiring in the vehicle is on either barrier strips or Molex connectors, so that everything in the car is easy to service, easy to change, easy to upgrade. All the interior trim, plastic and metal, all of it was redone. It was wrapped in a Mercedes-Benz package tray material. So all of the trim pieces were either sanded or ground down so that as each one slid into the other, the tolerances were tight with the added thickness of the cloth so that everything fit perfect. We took a modified Chevy truck overhead console, modified it to the vehicle, flushed it into the roof, again wrapped in Mercedes-Benz package tray material. Custom seats started out as some import seat that we got from the wreckers, designed a whole new look to it, all wrapped in Euromatch leather vinyl, basket weave inserts. Custom emblems we made for the seat. Started out as a 61 Buick Special door panel emblem, made some ABS textured trim rings, some mesh to match the door panels, and then inserted them as a medallion into each seat. front and back. The car was dynamated. There's two layers of dynamat, the initial asphalt, or I should say the original asphalt dynamat product on the floor, then a layer of the butyl dynamat over top, followed by the extreme liner. Each of the floor wells were built up with MDF so that the floor was completely even and flat. G-body cars are known to have very uneven, very weird shaped floors, so we used a lot of materials to build those floors up so it was completely flat. Headliner was sound deadened with hush mat and dynamat tack mat, door panels, backside of the dash. Everything was done, minimum of 2 layers. When this car closes the door, it sounds like a new Lexus with a soft little thud, and when you drive it, there's nothing you can hear from outside. Again, the trunk was done in original dynamat, asphalt deadening, went over it with a layer of Be Quiet, then painted all the exposed metal with Be Quiet metal covering. All the wiring in the car, front to back, is tied down in matching intervals, tie wrapped and clipped to the floor. Again, all the wiring under the dash is terminal stripped, Molex. Passenger side of the dash is a barrier strip. On that is a 16 pair cable that runs front to back in the vehicle. So anytime something wants to get added to the car, we just tie it in the trunk, tie it up front in the dash, and there's no need to tear the car apart and rewire it all the time. Trunk wise, typical GM car, everything's crooked, nothing's straight, tolerances are horrible. So spent a lot of time getting the trunk to a level point, so we had a level platform to build the entire trunk off of. The trunk is in multiple layers. There's an initial floor, and off of that, the amp rack, fusing rack is all built off of that floor piece, to the side panels, and then the sub box up on top of the wheel well hump. Each side panel houses fusing and switch panels, processor panel. Each panel is completely removable as a single unit with quick disconnect Molex plugs. In the factory spare tire well is a Samlex power supply, which has a marine plug-in cover underneath the on the outside of the spare tire well. So if going to shows and stuff, all you have to do is plug in the female side of a extension cord, and you have power for the vehicle. Panels were built for each compartment, meticulously matching side to side, all built out of MDF, all routed. Each piece is rabbited, and that rabbet allows for both fiberglass and for the thickness of vinyl, so that each piece can come apart. We have super tight tolerances on everything in the trunk. The trunk was stretched with fleece, then fiberglass, sanded smooth, and then wrapped again in a Euro vinyl. The entire trunk disassembles with a total of 6 screws. Make that 8 screws, sorry. The rear taillight panel pops out. It's held in place by the tight tolerance of the vinyl. Each side panel is held in with 1 screw. The trim around the subwoofer opening is held in with 2 screws, and then 2 screws hold the entire floor piece in to access the amp rack. The amp rack then is held in with 4 screws, and the fusing rack is held in with a couple screws. Both of those come out to access terminal strips underneath, which all the amplifier wiring runs to. Fusing, everything runs to barrier strips. The reason for this is during the installation of this, the product was actually swapped out 3 times. It went from MTX to Zapco to Arc Audio product in the car. We found that we needed a little more room up around the sub box area than what the factory trunk lid hinge system would allow. So we went to the wrecker and got a trunk shock system out of a Grand Prix, which is designed for a much heavier trunk lid. So it eliminates the torsion bars in the trunk, puts a shock under each arm, which frees up a lot of room underneath the rear deck and inside the amp rack. Each compartment is neon lit, individual neon tubes for each panel, again on quick disconnects. So the neon and the panel can all be removed as one single unit so that it's easy to service. The trunk lid we smoothed out, repainted it, made inserts for it. Again, have a simple, clean, subtle look to it. Unless you really knew the car, you'd almost think it was stock. Did a full frame off restoration on this. Custom frame, modified box, strengthened, LS motor, high performance transmission, Ford 9-inch. Smoothed the firewall out, body color matched it, custom intro wheels. This was a very fun build. It took a bit of time to put the whole car together, but every inch of the car is meticulously detailed and planned for every option, everything that you could ever think of, and everything is easy to upgrade and change for future upgrades. Thank you. Next up under the installation expertise is fabrication skills. We start this section with a custom emblem actually that I made. I'm a huge Snap-on fan, big Snap-on fan. I just bought a new Snap-on box and was kind of disappointed that the Snap-on didn't make any type of an emblem or a badge or anything, and I didn't want to just put a sticker on, so I printed a logo off of the internet, drew it out into MDF, made a template, and then routed one out of Sintra. Sanded it smooth, textured it, painted it satin black to match all the satin black trim on my toolbox. I actually made two different types, one with a chamfered edge on it and one with just a squared off edge. Made a couple of them for the guys around the shop and a couple other people online. Next up was some custom pods for a tweeter and a sealed mid. Because the product was JL, we used a small emblem that was flushed into the baffle of the pod. Both pieces were sanded smooth, textured, sem satin black, satin cleared for durability. Everything that I paint, I always use a combination of texture paint, and then some form of a clear, whether it be a low luster or a satin. It always seems to seal the grain, seal the texture, so you don't get dust and dirt caught in the texture of the pieces. And it also helps with scratching and smudging and rubbing, helps protect the piece and makes it last a lot longer. Next up was some tweeter pods. Made 4 different styles for our showroom stuff to show customers everything from basically cutting a hole in your A-pillar, mounting a tweeter, to an angled sound quality design, and then a couple just pure for looks, pure cosmetic appeal to people. Had a customer come in with an old Dodge, wanted a custom system made, so I actually made a small 1 by 2 foot panel to show him what I was going to do in his car as far as door panels and trunk panels, pleating to kind of match some of the stock heat insert pleating on the factory door panels, chrome trim, etc. Then I had to make a custom Mercedes emblem for a client's car, so I made that from scratch using a circle template, a couple of MDF pieces that I made. Routed that out of ABS, chamfered the edges, again texture paint, satin black, satin clear. I had a Toyota Echo come in. This guy didn't want to spend big money on a big car, but he wanted to spend big money on a big system. So we did a complete dash setup, Morel 3-way setup in the dash, sealed enclosures, everything, all wrapped in Mercedes package tray material, all designed for optimum sound quality, imaging, and staging, and having everything on the dash. Then some aluminum work. Did some aluminum rings, again for a Morel 3-way set, a 9, 3, and a tweeter. all beveled with an insert, and then each of those inserts was then wrapped in cloth and mounted on the Mercedes package tray velour material that we did the A-pillar and then the panels in. Wrapped the insert. The insert did two things. It was a cosmetic piece, and it also hid the mounting screws for the aluminum rings on the interior. Then we have a custom console that we built for a GMC Suburban. Everything about it was custom in the entire truck, from top to bottom, front to back. Everything was modified. So we modified the dash to house a double din, older Escort radar piece, Bluetooth piece. The deck that he had didn't have Bluetooth, so he had a standalone Bluetooth unit, Dakota digital gauges, etc., etc. Everything in here was LED backlit. The interesting thing about the interior in this, everything was triple layered. So the top layer was all done in an off-white to match the leather seats. Then below that was a layer of frosted plexi, beveled, with LEDs embedded inside the plexi. And then after that, everything was mounted to a cream-colored textured panel, keeping the theme the same throughout the entire vehicle. A lot of LEDs, everything in it was LED lit. Everything about the dash was modified to house a lot of components that the client wanted. And then lastly, more aluminum work. We had a client that came in with a Navigator. He had bought an inexpensive strut-looking main grill, but nobody had a lower grill for it. So we ended up getting some of the same. We bought a second grill, cut the stainless mesh out of it, and then made our own custom aluminum lower grill surround to kind of match the upper surround. We beveled the edges the same way the upper grill was, and then sanded it, polished it up to a chrome finish, and then mounted it into the vehicle underneath the grill, so we had a matching upper and lower grill for his truck. Last up is the using and implementing new technology section. This submission was a security vehicle that we built for Coast Mountain Bus Company, which is the local transit company here in British Columbia, or the lower mainland. They operate several hundred buses, about 150 transit supervisor vans, and about almost 3 dozen transit security cars. That entire network is all controlled by a system out of the Midwest called INIT, and this system allows any bus driver to send an SOS, send information back to the command centers about traffic issues, breakdowns, anything that would disrupt bus routes, schedules, etc. can be accessed by pretty much any bus, any of the supervisor vans, and any of the transit security. So each bus has a hidden SOS button, which when activated will automatically send a signal to any security or supervisor van that is in its local area. It will automatically alert the command center to what is going on. So the system has full GPS, two-way radio, computer Wi-Fi, everything all built into one mainframe. And each of these are put together, assembled, and installed in the trunk of each security car and transit supervisor vans that we do. The buses are built by a different company, but it uses the same INIT type system. So basically it's a complete secure network, a complete secure mobile network that ties together hundreds of vehicles with less than a second of response to any problems that do arise on the bus routes. This concludes the video presentation portion of my 2015 Top 12 Installer of the Year submission. Following this will be my personal interview, is in Word document form. It will be emailed along with the link for this video. I would like to take a second to thank ME Magazine for doing this prestigious award. I know it's been done for many, many years, but it has been, I believe, only the last couple of years that it's been open to Canadians. So as a 25-year veteran who has always wanted to try for this award, it is an absolute honor and a privilege, not to mention one of my career bucket list items that I'm now actually been able to go for. Making the top 50 was career bucket list. Making the top 12, I can't even explain what that feeling was like. So just to be able to put this together is an incredible thing for me, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart.